お願いします。
Fighting and anime are inseparable. Even though there are countless shows which feature absolutely no violence, for decades, anime has had a reputation as a medium that is second to none when it comes to delivering bombastic set pieces and action-packed thrill rides. However, today I'm going to take a look at the glue that holds any quality action anime together. Hello and welcome to Anime Editorial. I'm your host Nino, and today I'm going to try my hand at explaining what I think makes for a good fight scene. So to start, I'm going to list what I think are the 3 pillars of what makes a good fight scene in anime. Then I'm going to go through them one by one and explain what I mean and how they relate to various different shows in the medium. These 3 pillars are geography, motion, and psychology. In short, the placement and location of the combatants, the techniques used to engage us in the conflict of the combatants, and the individual stories told within the context of the fight. Those are the short versions, so the long versions go a little like this. Fight geography is a phrase that gets tossed around among kung fu movie aficionados, but I think it's extremely applicable to anime. The idea is that when 2 or more fighters are going at it, it's more engaging for the viewer to have a very clear sense of where they are in relation to one another. Seeing Jackie Chan interact with the environment in a fight with a bunch of dudes to get the advantage is what made a lot of his films some of the most celebrated classics in all of cinema. Likewise, in certain anime, it's very clear that a lot of work was put into having characters move believably during a fight based on the locations that they're in. Whether it be Spike and Vincent limiting their motions because of the compact nature of the train they're fighting in, or hey, having the Tengen Toppa throw galaxies around like shuriken because when you're that big it's the only thing lying around to use as a weapon. One example is the final battle scene from the film Sword of a Stranger. The fight makes use of very wide camera angles to give us a sense of location whenever the fighters move to a new area, and we see the environment play into the fight in various ways. They try to push each other off ledges, they brush snow into each other's faces, they make strategic movements to gain elevation to use to their advantage. If you watch this scene over, there are so many subtleties and little extra details that are used in this scene that only work because they play off of our understanding of the location the combatants are in, as well as the limitations and advantages that they have based on that. And that is what makes Sword of a Stranger one of the best showcases of fight geography, not just in anime, but in animation period. However, there are many times across all forms of visual media where a fight scene will start and we'll get no continuity as to where exactly the fighters are, and we just get repeated camera cuts and shaky cam to make it look as if some really cool shit is happening. In film, the biggest offenders I can think of are the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy and the Bourne movies. In anime, however, there's almost become a mini art form in and of itself on how to obstruct the viewer's sense of space in the fight scene. A famous example is the time-saving method of using speed lines in a still image of a character launching an attack. Bonus points if the environment they're in before the cutaway is different from the environment after. Another famous technique for sidestepping geography is what I like to call Toriyama terrain, which is to say you shouldn't place your fights in locations that are too difficult to consistently interact with. Rocky wastelands, cityscapes, the same area of Namek for over 100 episodes, the sky, and of course, space. Speaking of space, just because space is often depicted as a vast expanse of nothingness in most mecha anime, does not mean that mecha anime do not need fight geography. I can point to multiple fight sequences, especially in the Gundam franchise, specifically Thunderbolt and Unicorn, which prove this correct. Now, on to the next pillar. Animation is a visual medium comprised of several hand-drawn images that are meant to convey whatever the animators want them to. When it comes to how to visually convey a fight between 2 or more combatants, there isn't really one correct answer. Anime has had amazing battles that span universes, and equally as engaging fights that happen in train cars or classrooms. The quality of motion is entirely subjective based on what exactly the scene is trying to convey. However, this doesn't mean there isn't a blatantly wrong way to animate a fight scene. A fight is about winning a physical bout with your opponent, and to that end, if you employ a technique or use something as simple as a sword swing or a good old-fashioned punch, the goal of said action is for it to connect and for you to win the fight. The reason I'm talking you through this to such a degree is because sometimes it honestly feels like anime characters are just doing really flashy pro wrestling performances when we're supposed to believe that they're getting thrown into life and death battles. Don't get me wrong, I love me some pro wrestling, but when a character swings a sword 2 feet from where it's supposed to be, it's pretty clear that the animators are just overusing motion to make the fight look more exciting than it actually is. A prime offender of this is none other than the classic of fall 2015, the Asterisk War. And on that note, I defer to my friend and colleague Digi.
The guy comes running through the foreground towards the girl, but the sense of space is conveyed so poorly and his weapon is so awkward looking that it kinda looks like he totally whiffs. We can only really tell that he's aiming for the girl's head because she ducks down to dodge the attack, even though doing so was probably unnecessary. The girl rocket boosts off to the right and then swings at the dude, but this time he ducks under it, which was probably unnecessary because the colored light representing the sword's arc is actually right where his head would be if not for the fact that it's in front of him and missed entirely. So the guy lunges at her, but wait, what the fuck just happened? Wait, go back. Frame by frame. So in one frame, we see the girl's head start to move to the right, and then in the next frame, she's suddenly in a completely different pose and facing the opposite direction. The dude not only laughably misses his attack, but instead of lunging forward, his body apparently moves backwards, and then he jumps over another sword slash that looks like it wasn't even remotely close to hitting him anyway.
Motion also has a lot to do with how a fight is staged and shot, and with all forms of cinematography, it usually comes down to preferences. However, here are a few things I personally prefer to see. One is both characters on screen at once. I'm not a huge fan of short reverse shot fight scenes. It's much easier to make sense of a battle when you can see both combatants react to each other's movements in real time and not have the camera cut between them. Another is limited camera movement. I am not a fan of 360 field pans in fight scenes, especially when they're done with CG. Sure, they can look impressive sometimes, but a 360 shot is something you use in a single target to emphasize drama. Using it when two actors are carrying out detailed motions just makes things difficult to follow. Disclaimer, I'm not a licensed cinematographer, I'm just giving my opinion, so please don't attack me. Even though there isn't a rigidly defined set of rules to ensure the best looking fight scene, the general thought process behind choreographing a fight is that the people in it look like they're trying their hardest to win. When you're watching Ryuko and Satsuki go at it, you're watching two people try their hardest to completely destroy the other. The angles, the timing, and the specific movements they make are all done in service to this end. The team at Trigger knew exactly the type of motions they wanted the characters to enact in order to convey the emotions behind the fight. And speaking of emotions, that brings me to the third and final pillar. Out of all the three pillars, this is the one that at first seems the most difficult to understand, but when you sit and think about it, it's extremely simple. But before I talk about psychology in anime fight scenes, I'd like to talk about something completely unrelated. Pro wrestling. I really like pro wrestling. Not too big a fan of everything the Big W does, but wrestling from other parts of the world rarely disappoints. In wrestling, there's an old saying that gets tossed around to describe the end goal of what a good pro wrestling match is supposed to be, and that saying is tell a story in the ring. What this means is everything you do once you're in the ring performing is supposed to be in service of the narrative you're trying to tell with said performance. Most wrestling fans' greatest in-ring memories come from times when the story being told was able to resonate with them. Let me take you back to the summer of 2015, to the New Japan Pro Wrestling G1 Climax, a grueling competition of multiple different extremely talented wrestlers from around the world. How did the finals to this tournament play out? The two finalists were Japan's King of Strong Style, Shinsuke Nakamura, and the ace of Japanese pro wrestling, Hiroshi Tanahashi. The bout between them was a story that often gets told in pro wrestling: the striker versus the grappler. In this case, the striker, Nakamura, was going up against the grappler, Tanahashi. Most of the opening portion of the match consists of Tanahashi trying to keep Nakamura on the ground, keeping his legs in awkward positions so he can't strike with full force, while Nakamura's objective was to crack Tanahashi's head in two with his kicks. One very impressive segment was when Tanahashi spends a good deal of time trying to damage Nakamura's legs in order to make him more susceptible to his signature submission hold, the Texas Cloverleaf. Later on in the match, it becomes a battle of the two opposing men's finishing techniques: Shinsuke Nakamura's Bumaye and Hiroshi Tanahashi's High Fly Flow. Seeing the innovative ways the two men try to unleash said techniques is what lends the match a sense of drama and tension that just doing any random assortment of moves wouldn't really achieve. Any old school wrestling fan will tell you that the individual moves and crazy dives are all well and good, but the point of a wrestling match is to resonate with the crowd, and for you to be happy, or in some cases angry, that the right or wrong guy came out on top. Really, it's all about using psychology to emotionally resonate with you. Anime and pro wrestling aren't too different in this regard. In a perfect fight scene, everything the characters do should be in service of creating an emotional connection with the viewer, and a lot of the time that's exactly what they do. Everybody watching this video probably has a favorite fight scene in anime, and while I'm sure you can point to what makes a favorite fight great on a technical level, upon your first viewing it wasn't just the animation that got you invested in it, it was what the animation was in service of. An example of this is one of the final fight scenes in my favorite anime of all time, Samurai Champloo. A little known fact is that when Champloo was in production, the crew had a rule that they were to try their hardest never to have any weapons clash in the series. Every fight scene was designed to involve motion and deft maneuvering above brute force behind every swing. By the closing episodes of the show, we've learned that our two protagonists are probably the best swordsmen in all of Japan, and part of the reasoning behind that is that we rarely see them try to block any strikes. Their movements usually consist of striking and dodging so that they can control the flow of the battle. Now, how insane would it be to have a villain so badass that he forced the characters to do something that even the animators of the show itself are reluctant to do? Well, in episode 24, we get an answer to this question. In the opening flurry between Kariya and Mugen, it's pretty clear that Mugen is out of his depth when up against an enemy like Kariya, and instead of explicitly stating this outright in any way, the visuals on screen are able to communicate a sense of confusion and helplessness that you can only get from an animated medium. I mean, Kariya freaking walks through him, that shit was insane. Then in the next flurry between Kariya and Jin, we get what I was talking about earlier with the swords clashing. Kariya was pretty much able to crowd control both Jin and Mugen and back Jin into a corner by forcing him to block and retreat. You don't even need to have watched a single one of the 24 episodes prior to this scene to know what's happening now is that these two guys are in serious trouble because this one guy is too nice with a blade. I could go on forever about this scene, or many others, but I think that's all I need to touch upon for the purposes of this video. A fight scene may be viewed by some as just a way to keep the viewers interested with flashy moments of animation between story beats, but the best examples of them are much more than that. They serve as intricate stories in and of themselves, and are often an animation team's way of communicating things to the audience through nothing but raw movement and energy. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please like and subscribe so you can catch more of my vids as they come out. Also, starting now, you can support me on Patreon, so if you've always enjoyed my content and wanted to show your appreciation through your wallet, I won't stop you. Sayonara minasan, thanks for watching.